Hello, Kevin here with some Kerbal Space Program. Today I am doing more Kerbal Fuel Crisis. If you missed the last episode, this is where the Kerbals have run out of rocket fuel. They have jet engine fuel because they are different things in this universe. And speaking of universe, we have had a universe shift, which I will explain more about in a second. Just for now, you should know that Jebediah is now flying a modified version of the Kerbal Explorer that we saw in the previous episode. It has been modified to make use of the new B9 aerospace parts because part of this universe shift is the Kerbals discovering much more technology that they can use in their quest for kethane. So the first bit of new technology is the B9 aerospace parts. The Kerbal Explorer has been modified to use the more powerful engines that I forget the name of. It has also been modified with larger wing segments that are single wings. That is the main thing that I got B9 Aerospace for, is the larger wings. I cannot build large aircraft out of those teeny tiny little Kerbal wing segments. It's just not going to happen. I needed some kind of mod. B9 seems popular and had a lot of fun stuff in it, so I'm going to use that. There's a couple other mods at work too that we will see both in this episode and in the next one that is upcoming. So as you just may have seen, I know it went by a little fast, but our kethane has changed. There you go. See, previously we were mining kethane on an island to the southwest. Now we are mining kethane on a peninsula directly to the east of KSP. Why is that? Because I could not. I just couldn't. Alright, I'm going to completely level with you because this is a long flight. I have plenty of time to talk while we're crossing this ocean. And this is a long flight. That's straight. It's really straight. It's fast. It's a fast flight. It's across a limited body of water. I can barely handle these in my production schedule. Okay, the island that I was going to was about 40 minutes away real time. And that's kind of manageable. But that's with a fast craft. I could spend over an hour going with one of my slow-moving craft. I was trying to design some large miners and tankers and things. None of it was working out. I couldn't make the 40-minute flight over and over and over, and I especially could not make a 40-minute flight where you can't save. And of course I have a giant truck go by right then. Okay, as I was saying, you cannot save the game when you are in atmosphere, when you're moving. Alright, you have to be perfectly still on the ground or in space in order to save the game. So I could not do a 40-minute flight to an island, then mess up my landing and crash, and be unable to continue. I would have to do the entire 40 to an hour minute. I'd have to do the entire 40-minute to an hour flight over again. So anyway, that's enough with me complaining. That's explaining why things are different. But this is how things are going to be. I've done some experimenting. I've made sure that this time it's a viable structure for the series so that I can continue on without having to change things again. We've got several mods installed, we've changed how the map is, we know where the kethane is in this world, so we're going to stick with this now. And do I think it's cheating? No. I had another save file where stuff was right under KSP, alright? I didn't do that one, because that was too easy. Alright, I don't want to mine exactly at the Space Center. I really don't want to do that. So, we're flying across to this peninsula that eventually will run out of fuel. This kethane pack, now you can run out of kethane if you overmine. So this will be really interesting to see if we actually do run out of kethane in our patch here and have to go. I'm planning on doing off-world mining as soon as we get the rocket fuel built up. But the first step, of course, was to move our plane all the way across, get our exploratory flight out, see if we can find a nice flattish place to land our planes and tankers and things and continue mining. Right now it looks like that valley that I'm heading toward. You can see the lighter patch right next to the coast, and I don't know why there's so many freaking horns and things outside right now, but I'm not going to restart the recording. I'm heading toward the small... I was heading toward the valley that you see further away, but I think that the one a little closer next to the coastline would be a slightly better landing place. A little closer, close to the water, might be easier to get out from. This, in fact, turns out to be a huge mistake later, but for now, we will see this nice, tranquil glide path heading in towards the water. And this entire thing has been about 4 times speed. You've noticed in the corner there maybe that the little timer has been yellow the entire time, and I still have not figured out why exactly. I've been having some problems with slowdowns in the game. Some of it's going to be sped up more than others, because I was having a few little slowdown problems while playing especially this time. Now, engaging my air brakes, which are a marvelous, marvelous invention, I definitely recommend them for anyone who wants to use mods. The B9 Aerospace is really cool and gives you so many little toys and air brakes and things. So, having landed our Explorer, we now activate the drills and hope that we have once again struck kethane. For the first time. Once again for the first time, since this is technically an alternate reality. I'm going to call it an alternate reality. I like sci-fi stuff. Anyway, we have struck kethane, and now we just have to play the waiting game to fill up those 3 largest tanks on our flyer, and then convert all of that into our jet propulsion so that we have a full tank ready to get back to the Kerbal base. Now, Jebediah here is getting very bored. You can see him doing a little dance and smiling his head off. But really, this is going to be the crux of everything, is getting the plane out. I'm going to try to make all of my planes self-sufficient for the time being. Eventually, we're going to want to send a large factory ship out to this location so that we can have a small production facility so that planes can go out, collect their kethane and refuel without having to carry all the drills and converter equipment and all those other things that are just going to weigh them down. Make the planes much heavier and harder to control, harder to fly. We're going to try to do very quick flights with our tankers and with our exploration craft. Alright, speed. This has to be speedy and efficient because we are going to get so little kethane back most of the time. Now here we realize that there's also some experimentation. Check the blooper reel after if you want to see all of that. But here we start to realize that we have landed in a huge bumpy valley and that this plane needs a lot of space to get up to speed. I should have realized earlier, but you saw that on the runway we used almost the entire runway to get up to speed and get into the air, which is a problem because there's not that much space here. Everything's bumpy, everything's surrounded by mountains. I'm going to run out of space. So for now, we leave Jebediah and we go here to our supersonic kethane carrier with the cool cargo bay doors that accomplish nothing but don't do it. Anyway, this thing has 8 of those larger engines on it. So, testing out the control surfaces, testing out the air brakes, I throttle up wall braked so that I can get a shorter run distance, and it actually pushes the plane forward through the brakes, so this is probably a very good sign for the viability of this aircraft. And as you can see, the thing takes off in a few feet. I'm not even sure if that was one plane length. This is perfect for landing on rocky terrain, taking off without a runway, because the less time you have to taxi over the ground, the better. Now, this very large aircraft we are using almost exclusively B9 parts, which I'm loving. You notice the huge wings. I'm going to keep going on about the B9 parts because I spent hours and hours and hours trying to get large winged aircraft to work with stock KSP parts, and it almost certainly can't be done. Alright, I've seen a few people do it, but good God, the planes wobble and wiggle and this is 4 times physics warp acceleration, and look how stable this thing is. Anyway, the large wings, definitely a boon, definitely give you a lot of lift, especially with the high speeds we're going at. You notice this thing is already at over 1,000 meters a second. This thing hits Mach speed pretty easy. I need to look up what Mach speed is because I can't remember exactly in meters per second. I kind of remember in miles per hour, but Anyway, things probably going supersonic at this point. And some minor tweaks need to be made. The hardest part of this flight is trying to get it to land near the Explorer that we already have there, but Bill can do it. Bill is a capable pilot, certainly not as good as Jeb, but Jeb is currently stranded. So the hope with this flight is that we can get this out here. We can remove the kethane from the other ship, and then, being that the other ship will now be substantially lighter, we might be able to get it to take off and fly back to base. Because the one time that I got it to take off during the experimentation, let me know if you want to see more of the experimentation, because that's just going to be, we'll call it simulations, but it's going to be testing and things that is probably going to result in explosions. Might be more fun to watch maybe, but it won't really continue the story. So let me know if that's something you're interested in seeing. I can edit it into the videos. Anyway, during the during the tests that I did, I was able to get the plane off the ground once, but it found that with the kethane, it was just too heavy to make the flight all the way across back to the Kerbal Space port. So, really, that is the main problem, and that is why we're sending this larger, faster aircraft. My plan is for this to be our main small carrier. It's not going to bring that much kethane across. It's only got the 3 small tanks inside, but we might be able to expand this design into a larger carrier. But the main thing is I wanted something very stable and something very, very fast. Which both of these things are with this. It's been physics warp almost the entire time across. It made this flight, you can see up in the corner, it made this flight in about 10 minutes game time, which was like 5 or so minutes real time for me. So, quite a nice, stable aircraft we have here. It's weirdly indicative of the weirdly indicative of a 747 with those large wings, but really it's based more around the supersonic passenger jets that I remembered the name of 5 minutes ago. Really, anyway, this B9 nose that I have on here, I put on specifically because there's a really cool cockpit that can move up and down, which I thought I had some footage of in here somewhere. But anyway, the cockpit can tuck itself away inside the nose and give it a very streamlined shape, which I thought was really cool. It took me forever to build a craft that used that nose. That's the only reason that this plane exists, because I wanted to use that nose, and it just happened to be a happy coincidence that it also could use the cool docking port. No, not the docking port, cargo bay. I'm tired. Hello. Nice to meet you. It uses the nice docking port parts. It uses all the fun parts. I was just having fun playing with the B9 Aerospace kit, making all these fun little whatsy things. So in addition to B9 Aerospace, I also got the Airplanes and Helicopters pack. Forgive me, I don't have the name in front of me, but I got airplanes, helicopters, so it give me propellers, rotors, all kinds of other cool things that we will see show up later. I think some of the parts might have snuck their way into a couple of these designs, but overall, nothing much has been used in this one. I do have some interesting plans for that later on. I might try some of those next episode just to keep things fresh and interesting. But for now, we are going to come in for our landing. Landing is always the hardest part of plane flights, especially for me. I always had so much problem with landing. That is why I went for a much closer spot to mine, because trying to land these things after 40 minutes and watching them crash is just so devastating. It's terrible. I even have MechJib installed on this so that I can have it handle some of those longer flights for me, just so I don't have to sit there with the throttle controls and everything for an hour. But really, even that much time spent and then watching a plane crash is just devastating. So I was so sad when I overshot so much. I really thought I was going to smash into those mountains. Watch how I'm turning here and going around. But thankfully, those landing gear are very tough, and they were able to touch down pretty well. Unfortunately, we are miles away from Jebediah's Kethane Explorer. We are 600 meters away, which is completely unacceptable. So we let this thing roll back downhill, trying to get it to trim over. Unfortunately, the control surfaces on the ground are doing almost nothing. I was having so much trouble getting these planes to turn. So much, in fact, that I actually had to lift off the ground and turn around. That footage was unfortunately lost. But I wound up having to lift up and land again closer to the other plane. But for now, we'll just show you a little bit of this and then let you know that there was a huge amount of fiddling. Like this was like 20 minutes of fiddling around trying to get these aircraft close to each other with very little success. And there is a really obvious thing that I discovered later on that makes me simultaneously very happy and very sad. We'll see that in a minute when we get back to base. But for now, I'll just leave this plane right here and tell you there was a ton of fiddling around. And now we are back. We are closer together. Bob, I believe this is Bob. I forgot his name. Oh well, I'm terrible with names. Bob getting out of the plane to show you one of the other mods that I have installed. You see that he has gotten out of the plane and he has picked up part of the Kerbal attachment system. The Kerbal attachment system is this really fun mod that lets you pick up and move pieces of aircraft around, attach them to the aircraft. Right now, what Bob is holding is the Kerbal attachment pipe endpoints, which let you put a fuel line between two craft, because after some weird experiments earlier on, I discovered that docking on the ground is so fiddly it is almost entirely beyond my ability. So we have the Kerbal attachment program, Kerbal attachment system. I want to say program for everything in Kerbal. That should just be a rule. It should be like all the Kerbals being named Kerman. Should be everything's called a program. So, after fiddling around and getting the planes close to each other, Bill goes back inside. Not Bob. It was Bill. Oh well. Bill goes back inside his plane to move it closer, and without smashing into the other plane, which I was impressed with. I figured for sure I was about to smash into that thing. Now, unfortunately, the exits for all of these B9 cockpits are in very awkward places, so Bill opts to just jump off the wing. And it's very fiddly. This box is just inside the range that he can reach from the ground, so very fiddly. I'm probably going to have to move that. But you grab out one of these pipe endpoints, and then you can attach it to the plane. You see one's already attached, and you link it up. And then you can walk over to the other plane with your Kerbal, using some nice time acceleration, and then you can attach it to any part of your other plane. And then they act just like they're docked. Excuse me. They act just like they're docked. You can transfer fuel between them. That is the main thing we're going to be using this for. Excuse me. It is a little more annoying to have to get your Kerbal out, but I think it's actually kind of more realistic. It adds some nice flair and things to have your Kerbal on the ground moving around. Now, finally, we get to transfer the kethane that Jebediah mined into our carrier craft. And unfortunately, we make a mistake because I decided to drill a little bit, make sure we had enough, and I wound up time accelerating too far and completely filling up Jebediah's craft with kethane again, which was the entire thing we were trying to avoid. And since I'm not going to send a second one of these craft out just to get the kethane that we accidentally mined, this is not going to be a designated mining craft. This is a bad place to land. This is a bad place to take off from. I'm not going to let our mining craft remain here, and that's not a very good or efficient mining craft. I don't want Jebediah's Explorer to become our default mining craft, so we're going to have to find another way to get it back home. But for now, we just climb back into our supersonic carrier and let Bill head home. Jebediah, now he's got a pack of cards or a Game Boy. He can play solitaire or something. I'm sure that we brought that along for him in the event that we couldn't get him back home. But Jebediah is just going to have to frickin' sit tight. Alright, he's good at that. So first things first, let's just move him out of the way of our large carrier craft. It would be really terrible if these craft crashed into each other after all of this, preventing either one from taking off. I do have some plans. We're going to have to find a way to get Jebediah back home, and hopefully with his craft. I'm planning on some sort of maybe large carrier type of device that will be able to bring him back. But for now, we just rev up our nice supersonic, and you can see, even with the brakes on, the thing tries to push itself forward. I let it spool up with the brakes on so that it doesn't have to taxi while the engines are revving up, because these engines do take a little bit of time. But between the powerful engines and the huge wingspan of this thing, it can take off in a couple of feet, which again is perfect for these rocky terrains. I'm going to have to start outfitting all of my planes like this, making sure that they can take off instantly, or making some VTOLs. I did do some experiments with VTOLs. They ended terribly, but you know, we live and learn. We'll make some VTOLs or some helicopters or something fun. Anyway, but landing and taking off in the rocky terrain that we're mining on is going to be the biggest challenge of this series, especially with this many largish planes. Now, to get back, we have to make a really sharp turn in the direction we were at, which this plane can handle pretty well. I'm really impressed how stable this thing turned out to be. Once again, B9. And here is the here's me trying to retract the cockpit like I was talking about earlier. Do I actually manage it? Yes. Now you can see that the cockpit retracts into the body of the plane, giving it a much more aerodynamic base. Doesn't matter for this because I do not have aerospace installed. I don't think I'm going to. I'm bad enough at flying in the traditional KSP game. Bill looking very upset there. But if you were using an aerospace What am I thinking of? If you were using a realistic flying system, that would be very helpful to reduce drag. But I'm not. I'm using stock KSP, which is very much not realistic flight in atmosphere. So we skip over the long flight back home because you've already seen it twice at this point. It's exactly the same thing you saw going the other direction, but back this way. If you want to see it, go back and reverse the video and watch it. That piece in reverse, you'll get the idea. Coming in for a very slow landing. Landings, I find, are incredibly slow with these craft. I don't know if I'm doing it wrong, or if I'm slow at landing, or if this is always how landings are when you're just gliding in, but really I find them very dull and tedious, and I'm going to start cutting them out more and more as we go on. But I wanted to show you some of the landings in this one, since it's technically the first episode, even though it's the second episode of the series, and temporal shift. Shut up. I'm coming in for a nice easy landing. Going to miss the runway, it looks like, so I have to do some very weird aerial maneuvers, just kind of serpentining back and forth until I get to exactly where I want to be. The air brakes on this thing and the I need to look it up, but I think these landing gear can receive slightly more shock, being with the heavy-duty B9 landing gear. Makes landing pretty easy. You see, I came in way too high, had to go into a weird little dive, then wound up going the wrong direction and had to turn and wiggle around and get my brakes going, landing at 20 meters a second, which I don't think is that bad. And finally on the runway. Now, something that we really had to do was get this thing off the runway, and then we discover that you can enable steering on these landing gear. Even powered steering. These things have little motors. I didn't know that. I didn't know that when I was fiddling around trying to get the planes to touch each other. Oh my god, I would have loved to have known that. And now I do, and I'm so happy. So anyway, we got it off the runway so that we could launch our kethane extractor slash our kethane storage extractor slash factory modifier converter. There we go. That was a word. And just for the heck of it, we put some huge searchlights on in case things come back at night. But being that most of our stuff is solar powered, that's going to be a bit of a problem. So there goes, I forget his name. It's not one of the main three, but he was able to climb down upside down on the ladder and smack his head pretty good. Bill now extending the Kerbal attachment system winch, which will allow him to get an attachment onto pre-existing ports on the aircraft. He does also have fuel pipes in that small box, but they would have been a pain to get on. You can see these small ports up here that are out of reach, but thankfully we did decide to put one next to a ladder on the other side. Might run into some clipping issues, but really, so far, all of our craft are going to have at least one of these ports on. Think of it like a gas cap. You put one of these on, and then you can attach the Kerbal attachment system winching thing. I guess it's just a winch, but you can attach that and dock the planes using that with your Kerbal, and that's what's going to allow us to do most of our fuel transfer on the ground here. So this is very exciting. This is the first time we've gotten a tanker craft back and actually gotten the fuel out of it and into another craft on the ground. This is the first rocket fuel we are going to be able to make. So I'm not sure why that keythane thing is partially empty, but we empty it out and we see how much of barely a drop we actually got. And look at that. We wound up with what, about 20,000 kethane, almost 30. But that's enough. That's enough. We're going to be able to detach this because the things don't like loading with things attached. I've had wheels pop. I've had all kinds of things happen in the past. So we're going to get this thing out of here and get our nice little Kerbal, who I will find out the name of in a second, back into the ship. Excuse me, I have a bit of a cold. And the weird thing happening with the ladder, I don't know why, but it doesn't seem to break it. It just makes it wobble around when he's walking on it for some reason. So make sure we're braked. We turn on the liquid fuel and oxidizer converter because that's what you need to make rocket fuel. Now time accelerating to make sure that we get all of that converted, and we are going to have rocket fuel. We might actually be able to attempt a rocket flight soon. We could probably send a small probe to orbit the moon with that much fuel if we were very careful. But right now, we're just going to put it in storage. I don't think there's any point in sending a scanner to another planet at this juncture. We have plenty of stuff to do right here on Kerbin, and we're going to need much more rocket fuel if we want to get a viable mining system out on other planets. But that's very exciting. First time we've gotten that to work. Oh, I'm so glad that you enjoyed this episode. If you did, like, subscribe, comment, etc. It's going to be a continuing series, and I really do hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned for more. Next time we have to try to rescue Jebediah, which will be so exciting. In the meantime, just, I do all kinds of gaming videos. You can watch those. You can just wait around for the next KSP thing. No bother to me. I hope you enjoyed. I'm Gepwin, and I'll see you next time.